Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. I definitely have the wrong layout. I just noticed that as we started the show. This is Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe starting one of our many off-season pods here. It's Tuesday, August 8th. It's about 9:30 at night for anybody that's joining us live. Probably don't have that many live streamers because I've not really published this show, but that's okay because I'll put it up on the podcast feed. I'm joined as always by my co-host Josh Bowe. Josh, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. I think it's pretty funny that we're both kind of MIA this weekend as we've been planning this week out. That's kind of funny considering what's going on this week. Because finally something is happening that we can talk about. I try to smoothly segue us into probably our first talking point of the day.
It's great. What Josh is referring to is obviously this weekend, Dirk Nowitzki is getting inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, which is up in Springfield, Massachusetts, I think.
Yep.
Seems like it's a pretty incredible place. Friend of the show, Dalton Trigg, is actually going. Mark Stein's up there already. Seems like it's a big deal. It's pretty amazing, and we're going to talk about it a little bit because I really want to see what Dirk has to say along with the rest of the stuff. And then I think we'll cover it kind of more at length next Tuesday. But it's a fascinating whole ordeal because Josh and I completely screwed our schedules in that he's going to go. You've had a long-term vacation planned with some friends, which sounds fun. And then I planned last minute just because my wife and I couldn't, school starts on Monday for our son, and we couldn't find anything for him to do this week. And so
School starts Monday?
Yeah.
What?
I know, right? Well, I mean, it's think about it. It's middle of August. It's always around August 15th or so, and that's the 14th. So
I know. I just have my only time frame is when I started school, and I thought I always remembered it starting the second to last week of August or last week of August. I don't know.
Yeah. It's so hot, so they try to get kids out of the feet, out of not having to be outside. And so I'm heading to Kansas City to see my parents with my son just for something to do, and that all falls on the Hall of Fame based stuff. So the Hall of Fame, the actual, if you check in on NBA TV, we have a post going up Thursday about it. There's stuff going on all week long on NBA TV. It's kind of the dead zone for everything but baseball in the Little League World Series. That's kind of the only, WNBA is on as well. There are some friendlies for the Basketball World Cup, but there's just not it's kind of an ideal time for this sort of thing. And the NBA with their partners, I don't necessarily feel like they do the greatest job of pushing it, but I suppose probably have. It's you go to ESPN and Little League World Series dominates this time of year. It's just kind of what happens. And so you can, if you have NBA TV, I would just kind of recommend going and checking out like what sort of programming is up. There's going to be a lot of things like, today Dirk is basically doing a low-key media tour. He did an interview with Mark Stein on Saturday on The Freak, which they then, released in podcast form, which is nice because frankly, I just missed it. Like Saturday at noon is a tough time for me to catch a show. Then I'm pretty sure he might have gone on Jeff Skin Wade's show today as well for like another hour. And
yeah, he opened his new restaurant in the DFW airport and they had the show there.
Okay. So that makes more sense. And so it's a nice tour. There have been some really interesting articles, like very in the weeds stuff. Like the Brad Townsend had a story about how, Dirk he's just settled into this statesman role so beautifully, not just for like the Mavericks, but for like basketball as an ambassador. And European followers will know this obviously because he's been so involved with FIBA and he's traveling the world, like doing what's incredible about Dirk at this point in his life is he's doing all the stuff he said he wanted to do. Like, I know that sounds a little silly when you say it out loud, but like how many people have intentions of doing certain things when they're done with their particular job and they just never get around to it? Whereas Dirk seems to be like living his absolute best life. It's really funny to me. I'm getting a kick out of watching him seeing what he's doing with his life.
Yeah, it's always fun to check in with Dirk, especially since, Dallas is his home, but he is traveling probably more than he ever has to make up with, lost time with family and his own family. And so, he's usually gone, I don't know how it works, but, he's in Germany or he's visiting his wife's family in Sweden and Kenya.
Yeah.
And then, just trying to make up for that lost time. And so it's always fun to see him when he's back around in town. He had the press conference today, which, that's where a lot of stories came out of. He's a good storyteller, which is kind of funny considering, he started his career he was not a media guy at all. English was his second language. He just had a, more shy inward personality.
Right.
And who would know that he even said during the press conference, he's like, I'm not really, I'm not good at public speaking. It's like, well, could have fooled me.
He's so full of shit. He's great. He's so good. What he's gotten good at, little thing here, but he's gotten good at telling the same stories and making it sound like he hasn't told that same story 100 times. Like that's a real impressive thing. It's like Luka, you can tell. I mean, he's 24. When Luka gets asked a question he's answered 100 times, you start to see it in his face. So he's like, I got it. Whereas Dirk's just I went to an it was a reading about the book that he did. I got it back here. Where it's The Great Nowitzki by Thomas Pletzinger. And he did like a reading. Pletzinger did like a read. Great book, by the way. Like it started out, if you don't know anything about this book, it started out as an article and became like a 10-year sojourn. It's an incredible book. But Dirk showed up and answered some questions. He's so good at this sort of stuff.
He speaks English better than I do.
So comfortable with it. But there was Brad Townsend's story this week, or I guess it was last week, mentioned how he had like at one of the pre-Hall of Fame things, I think back around the announcement in April, he and his family sat at the same table as Dwayne Wade and his family. And I have grown, like, there's an ick factor for me with how I feel like the NBA pushes them together to be friendly. And it's felt forced in all candidness versus hearing Dirk talk about it, where it seems that he's just at the point in his life where he's like, all right, we are connected. I'm going to accept this. And it seemed like he and Wade's family had a good time talking to one another. And I had somebody in my Twitter mentions say, it's like, does this mean we're not allowed to hate Dwayne Wade anymore? And I said, absolutely not. Dirk Nowitzki might not hate him anymore, but sports pettiness is one of the last real like places where you're allowed to be an asshole unrelentingly. So I don't know. I've enjoyed some of the look backs. I posted just an engagement hunting tweet like nobody's business where I said, when I say Dirk, when I say Dirk Nowitzki, what gamer moment comes to mind? Got a ton of like variants and responses. Obviously, like the 2006 San Antonio series is one that really sticks with people probably over the age of 30. Then obviously 2011 whole thing there. I did get some truly incredible answers, like when he broke Carl Landry's face and ended up with 5 teeth in his elbow. Like, there's just like, the more you talk about Dirk, like the more you think about it, like when the man plays for that long, there's just so many ways you could go with it. And I think that, we'll let some of this stuff percolate, and then next week maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it. I mean, you mentioned something earlier today about how you wanted to write something before his Hall of Fame speech, but realistically, like, we've done all this. Like, this is the this is the capstone. The Hall of Fame, I'm sorry, the jersey retirement ceremony that the Mavericks put on was truly amazing. The ceremony unveiling was really, really good. What more, like, at this point, what more can you say as a Dallas fan? Because we've already said it a million times. What the Hall of Fame is about for me is seeing the recognition from his peers. And that's the coolest part to me, because I'm pretty sure Dirk's going last. And like, if you guys don't remember who else is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, let's go through it real quick. Dwayne Wade, Pau Gasol, Tony Parker, Greg Popovich. Are you kidding me? Like, this has got to be one of the most recently decorated, like, all these guys are in the Hall of Fame for a reason, but it's like guys that are, it's so many like guys, like marquee players on top of their game. Just really incredible. I'm very, like, it's a 3-hour long ceremony, 8 to 11 p.m. and that might be Eastern time on Saturday night on NBA TV. I might actually have to watch the whole thing. In the past, I've really only watched particular clips.
Yeah, and I like the way you put it, kind of getting the recognition from his peers, because that's always been, like, if you're a Dirk, if you're a longtime Dirk fan, like, that's always been the thing. Like, he's always been ours, and nationally until 2011, he was kind of like our little indie rock band. Like, obviously he was popular. Like, I mean, he was a global superstar in a way. But he played in the era of Kobe and Kevin Garnett and Tim, like, just a lot of other bigger personalities. And Dirk famously only had like 2 sponsors, Nike and that German bank. Like, he just wasn't in the public eye for a reason, like on purpose. Like, he didn't want to be. So to see him finally get his flowers after a long career, it's really nice, because like, you kind of forget, like, it's easy to forget, like, it's not easy for us to forget, but for other people, like, he's one of the best 15 to 20 players that's ever played basketball. So,
and when these guys
he scored the 6 most points ever, like, he's got more points than Shaq. Like, sometimes I forget how many points he scored. Like, it's where he is on that list. Like, he is truly one of the all-timers, and he still kind of feels like our local, kind of like local regional kind of star. But no, he's one of the best ever.
Well, and you triggered something in my mind. One of the things I loved about the NBA's 75th anniversary, even though there's still a bunch of guys that didn't show up for COVID-related and health-related reasons, watching these guys get together and marvel at one another is probably one of my favorite things. Like, Michael Jordan was the only guy who didn't really, when I just walking around the Hall of Fame stuff, who didn't seem to be in awe of anyone, which fine. You're the GOAT. Yeah. You're allowed to do that, Michael Jordan. Because I remember like Jason Kidd standing to the side, fellow Hall of Famer and top 75 basketball player, just kind of like in awe of Jordan. But these guys all really, like, when they talk about one another, and there's few guys, like, for example, like Kevin Garnett is it's just, he rankled a lot of his peers. Like, they didn't like playing against him. But it's like a lot of these guys, as they get older, they just start to appreciate one another. The ones that, it's funny when you see like some of these like TV commentator guys like that your Perkins and these guys that snipe at each other. It feels very petty, but like the best of the best, they don't really like do that. They seem to be in who was it? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had, like, over the course of Dirk's like career, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar made a lot of like weird comments about Dirk, and yet there's like a really cool photo of Dirk and Jabbar recently. It was within the last 2 years, where it's just like, man, this is these two guys have accounted for a bajillion NBA points.
Yeah.
Like it's so neat to see them together. Let's see here. Cowboy in the chat says, Kirk, if you remember, people did a 180 on Dirk and called him washed up after the Warriors ran Dallas off the court. I mean, I 100% remember, like 2006, 2007 are just, it's Sisyphean what happened to Dirk. When 2008, 2009, 2010, Dirk suffered some real public embarrassments to go along with this. Like Dirk was 32 when they won the title. That doesn't happen. Guys win the title when they're 26 to 30. It's nuts. So, well, look at me. I said we weren't going to talk about these guys for that long, and here we go, because talking about Dirk is really, really awesome.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Before we move on to the next subject, if you guys could go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button. You know, it's dead of summer, not a lot going on, so obviously not a lot of people in here. But if you could do that for us, that'd be helpful. And if you are interested at all in our shows, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You know, we will be doing more. We do a lot of shows in season. Josh and I talk to each other a lot. And I host that podcast that I did on Friday where, you know, you guys can come participate if you want to. Like this part, you know, it's a podcast, but as I've been kind of talking to more and more people lately, like it's just like talking sports with your friends. You're just broadcasting and sharing the conversation with people. So I would like it if you guys subscribed and continue to help grow our channel. Grant Afseth over at Dallas Basketball caught a Kyrie Irving tweet, which I missed because I'm just trying to stay off social media during the summer, that I thought was at least worth talking about a little bit. Earlier in the week, the USA men's select team, so basically like the B team, beat the USA men's national team twice in 10-minute scrimmages. And it was like sort of a story because there's no basketball news. Like, you know, really good basketball players play each other. The slightly less talented team won twice. Like, that's what makes basketball great. But Kyrie, you know, shared the story, shared like a tweet about it and said, it happens. It's part of the game when everybody's trying to find a role and earn playing time. You got to give the guys in the World Cup team time to gel and time to get to know each other's game. Don't overreach. What did he say here? Don't overreach with this post. And, you know, he always says stuff like that because he doesn't like his comments being taken out of context. But I liked the thought, number one. And I like the fact that, you know, Kyrie Irving, like you and I were talking about this beforehand. It's 2023. You don't have the clearest of memories you mentioned in the show beforehand about the 2014 Basketball World Cup and the 2016 Olympics, of which Kyrie Irving was part of both of those teams. And it's just really like, I think it was sage thought from Kyrie Irving. And you know, I just kind of wanted to get, you know, your thoughts a little bit on it because I'm really interested in this men's national team. I really, like we talked about this last time, the World Cup and international basketball is like one of my favorite things. I know it's kind of a weird question, like, But did you have any thoughts to expound upon with that one?
I saw a lot of weird takes and tweets during the exhibition game against Puerto Rico, where there were people being like, "Wow, USA basketball is vulnerable again," and I'm like, it's one exhibition. It's the first these group of guys have only been together for 5 days. It's not the best of the best, obviously. A lot of guys sit out the World Cup and then they'll play in the Olympics because they want the Olympics are a bigger deal. And even with all that, they look good. They look really good at times. Spoiler alert, the United States of America has a lot of fantastic basketball players. It was just weird. It felt like it was just trying to generate a story when there wasn't a story to be told because everyone's kind of bored and waiting for the next news beat or something. It was very weird. This team is not 2004 at the program is
the
not
USA
there.
is simply never going to dominate like they did in 1992 ever again. The point is to win the tournament, not win every game by 60 points.
Yeah, I don't even the greatest teams in the greatest countries for sports in other leagues don't win. FIFA World Cup, there's a different winner almost every year. I just don't know why America has to win every single basketball game by 60 points or it's a failure. It's just really weird. It's not how the sport evolves. It's a big country. Not a big country. It's a big world. There's a lot of people here. Eventually other people are going to, get better at this. It was just, I don't know. It was just really weird. Cause I'm with you. This team is cool. I like a lot of the guys on this team. It's kind of fun to see a team that's not 8 MVPs and all Hall of Famers. It's just different. And you get to see some guys that don't necessarily always get the national spotlight, but are still really, really, really good. And that's fun to me. I don't know why you would look at this and try to spin it. Why aren't they more dominant? To me, I'm just enjoying seeing kind of a different flavor of USA basketball that's still really good.
It is really good. And the thing that there's a lot of takeaways for this, but before I forget, one of the things I wanted to point out, if any of you forgot, like I did, that Kyrie Irving was the 2014 FIBA World Cup MVP, go Google some videos of him then. Obviously, the Cavs won the title in 2016, but when you think of Kyrie in sort of an idea, peak of his powers, just destruction from the guard position, 2014 Kyrie Irving was a sight to behold.
I've got his box score up from the final.
Okay.
The final of the World Cup. 26 points on 10 of 13 shooting, 4 of 7 from 2, and 6 of 6 from 3. Only 2 turnovers, no free throws, but
he's an older guy now, smaller guard. The athleticism that he still has is pretty friggin' spectacular. But go watch some of the stuff. It's just there's art in his movement. There's really something there. But so to bring it back to elements of the World Cup that I mentioned, I am personally victimized by Steve Kerr continuing to talk about Jalen Brunson's leadership. Yeah. These things are going to they find the Jalen Brunson at all finds new ways to hurt me. Right. There's no other way around.
It never goes away.
It's just such a colossal blunder that even Kyrie signing with the Mavericks can't cover because it's just a different situation. The next thing that I was thinking about, Tim Bontemps talked about this a lot. Part of the reason that the men's select team won those 2 games is Dallas. I'm pretty sure he's from here. He at least played some high school ball here. Native Cade Cunningham dominated because they had the select team essentially had Cade playing the Luka position. Yeah, well, the Luka role of primary ball handler, scorer, distributor, et cetera, and they just whooped the men's national team that way. Found that very interesting because heading into that draft, there was a lot of Cade Cunningham is an American Luka, and his first season was pretty good, but not great. Last year he was injured for most of it. So
I was a Cade truther. I remember there were some people that were didn't think he would be that great. And I remember buying into that American Luka.
I just like seeing the fact that he's popping back because he faded into the background. I think that's neat.
Yeah, the talent's there.
And then the last thing about American basketball that you sort of touched on in relation to Puerto Rico, one of the things that I'm very curious to see what happens with American basketball over the next 10 to 15 years is if we ever get a return, and I think we may, of the American big man in a way that's not pure role playing sense. Like Jaren Jackson, I still think he's a world basketball is for Jaren Jackson Jr. if he can stay out of foul trouble, if he can just not do the dumb foul things he does. But otherwise, Team USA is like real small. Like there might be some length going on, and they have some guys who are big, but they don't. There's some big centers out there. You look at France for the Olympic team; they have the ability to play Victor Wembanyama, Joel Embiid, and Rudy Gobert. All three of those guys are on the French national team and will be for the Olympics next year. Like the Americans need to find size eventually. Chet, I think is something because he can play some offense and some defense. But I'm just wondering if there is ever going to be a return to the American big in a way that you see get reflected in the NBA. I could, because you got like DeAndre Ayton, he plays for the Bahamas. Like it's a different situation.
Yeah, it's probably just a development thing. Like, I mean, the American big is not playing like it's Kevin Durant is a 7. Like he's a 7.
Yeah, he's a big 7 foot. That's a great point.
So like it's just those guys are doing that. Like I think the guys that are in that 6'8" to 7 foot 6'10" range, they're perimeter based. They're just wings, and they're just learning those types of skills. I mean, they're that good. Like you can't really argue about how good Kevin Durant is. So yeah, it's interesting. We'll see. Hey, maybe Derek Lively can be I mean, Tyson Chandler was on an Olympic team once.
Yeah. So and that's actually where my head is going, because it's like I've been inadvertently kind of like going to more of these high school games and AAU tournaments in the area just for stuff, because like I go to a lot of Plano Sports Authority things, and like the sheer number of enormous children is bad. Like there's just so many big people. This is a great point in the chat. If Anthony Davis wasn't made of glass, he would solve a lot of problems for the United States. That's true. That's true. And he did play for a couple of sessions. That's really something to think about. The last thing we just want to touch on, and then we'll get out of Dodge here, is in another friendly exhibition game. I don't like the term friendly, but that's what you call the soccer match or the football matches overseas, and it's the closest. These exhibition matches, which are pretty testy. Let's hear. Slovenia played Montenegro today. Luka was thorough. Like there's just kind of no other way to call it. I didn't get hurt. Scored 34 points, 13 boards, and 13 assists. There's a couple of different YouTube videos you can probably go find if you want to see it. I don't know, man. Just watching Luka play with the FIBA ball is a real joy. It makes me wish the NBA ball had some differentiation in the color, but there's a mastery of the game going on when you watch Luka play in these games.
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed in these games, I need to write a column on it before I dip out this week. It's just like with Luka, there's no like, I don't want to say taking a day off, because that's kind of not what I mean. But like with Luka, he knows when eyes are on him, and his ability to just always continuously show up and put on a show, not just produce, but the flair that he plays with, and the way that he can play with that flair and channel it. And it's not just superficial, but it's productive. Like he's a very flashy, talented guy, but it's not empty calorie. Like he's not empty calories. Like he's not just throwing up highlight reels just to.
They don't have those assists, points, and rebounds. They don't win.
Yeah, like he's doing behind the back passes and doing all this crazy stuff. Partly because he's that good and he can get away with it. He's cocky, he's confident, but also like he ends up making the best basketball play usually. Like it's just kind of amazing how productive he is while also being as entertaining as he is to watch. Sure. I remember one of our staffers, who's Ben, we were talking in Slack, and he kind of talked about how the efficiency wars in basketball has kind of made watching the game a little bit for him a little monotonous in a way. And I didn't fully agree with him there, but I do kind of see what he means. A lot of players try to play the same way in terms of like, where do you want to shoot from the floor? Like the rim, and threes and free throws. And there's not a lot of variation there. And like Luka is obviously, he's doing the same thing. Like he wants to be at the rim, or he wants to shoot threes, or he wants to go to the free throw line. But there's just like a flair. There's just a pizzazz, call it what you will. He's just a good showman. And he always, like, if you buy a ticket or if you're tuning in, like you almost always get your money's worth with Luka. And coincidentally, like the only time he doesn't do it is at the All-Star game, which you think he should do it more, but for whatever reason, that's when he decides to take a step back into the background. But yeah, it's just like these games don't matter, and he's just going nuts. Like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, looking forward to the official games when they start August 25th.
Yeah.
Still a few more friendlies. We'll see if Luka plays in all of them. They do play the United States
on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that these friendlies, like I thought this was all happening because the World Cup's in the Philippines, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought all these games were happening around the Philippines, but they're not. Like the USA game, I think, is in the Slovenia USA game, Spain. So these guys are traveling. Like, man, what a schedule! Like,
yeah,
traveling for these games, and then you got to travel to the World Cup to play in the Philippines, and then the Mavericks are flying overseas again for the preseason. Like, I can understand why some of these, like a Kevin Durant or something, like these other older superstars are sitting out, because that's a lot of travel.
Yep.
Being tall in an airplane is not fun.
Doesn't matter how much luxury you have. Yeah,
right.
That's absolutely the case. All right, so I think we may cut this one a little bit shorter. Like we mentioned, both Josh and I are taking a little bit of time in the second half of the week, but I have decided to republish kind of the interviews. The day that Dirk's jersey retirement ceremony happened, I was not working very much, and I called up 8 different people to talk about Dirk Nowitzki. And each interview is like between 5 and 15 minutes long, and it's people that Bobby Corrala, Jason Gallagher, Ben Collins of former child reporter for the Dallas Mavericks. There's also kind of it's very bittersweet and in an extent and kind of surreal listening to it now. But I got Jonathan Tjarks, and this was about 9 months before he passed away. Just hearing him talk about Dirk was really, hearing it again was very special. But it was an interview. It was a series of stuff where it's like hearing these other people talk about Dirk. It's one of my favorite things I've been a part of. So we're going to reshare that Thursday afternoon. Give you something to listen to over the course of the weekend. You'll have plenty of content out there in the world if you're interested in Mavs related stuff. But I did want to have one thing up on it. And then after, Dirk gives his, speech, we'll probably talk about it next week. And then, by that point, we're going to be right up against the front of the World Cup. And we will, have probably a little more specific stuff to talk about. Honestly, it's hard to watch these games right now because the friendlies, like we could find a way to watch them, but because, day jobs and such, like I don't want to burn that much of my like PT and PTO, like watching a game that ultimately doesn't matter. But I will probably do some of that come August and September for the World Cup. So we'll have a little more substantive stuff to talk about, but I don't think people will mind.
Yeah, we'll be okay. Life finds a way.
That's exactly right. Well, Josh, you go have fun on your trip. I'm gonna have we'll see if I'm gonna have fun on mine. I gotta drive through Oklahoma. We'll see how great that's gonna be.
Is this the first time you've done the drive from Dallas to Kansas City?
No, I've done it. I did it a number of times when I was a kid. So
okay.
It's better than the drive from here to St. Louis, which is where my wife is from. You gotta like go all the way across Oklahoma. So like I'm in Oklahoma for like 4.5 hours. So we'll see.
Stomping grounds in Lawrence.
Okay. Yeah. Well, everybody be good. Check out any content we put out on MavsMoneyball.com. We at least have one thing every day. We're not quite as prolific as some of our friends out there, but we don't have the incentives to do that in the off season. So Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe, please like, rate, and review and subscribe to our shows, and we will talk with you guys a little later next week. Bye, guys.